You know what's crazy? Most people think investing is about money, but it's not. It's about thinking. That's why you can give to people the same $10,000. One becomes a millionaire, the other ends up broke. It's not about what you have. It's about how you think about what you have. And here's the truth nobody tells you. If you don't learn to think like an investor, you'll work for someone who does. You'll keep grinding, hustling, doing your best, while someone else, somewhere, multiplies their money, using your time. So let me ask you, are you ready to stop working for investors and finally become one? Then let's go. Every time you get paid, a battle begins, and most people don't even realize it. There's no blood, no alarms, but the consequences are life-changing. It's the war between spending and investing, between the now and the later, between who you are today and who you could become. And here's what most people get dead wrong. They think investing starts with money. It doesn't. It starts with thoughts. If your brain isn't trained to think like an investor, you'll just throw your money at the wrong things and call it investing, like buying an overpriced car because it holds its value, or putting money in crypto just because your friend did. That's not strategy. That's imitation. And imitation is the death of original wealth. Let's get raw. Imagine this. You give $10,000 to two people. Same amount. Same conditions, no strings. Person immediately thinks, okay, I can finally breathe. Maybe I'll fix the car. Maybe a little vacation. I should enjoy life. Person B pauses. They ask, how do I make this $10,000 pay me every month? Forever? Same money. Two brains. Two futures. That's the difference between a consumer's brain and an investor's brain. Now let's break this deeper. The consumer brain is trained from childhood. You turn 5, you're told to wish for a toy. You turn 16, you deserve a car. You turn 21, celebrate by spending on shots. Society doesn't train us to build. It trains us to buy. And most people never question it. But an investor questions everything. They question the system. They question their habits. They even question their feelings. Here's an example. You feel stressed. The consumer looks for a release. Food, entertainment, purchases. The investor, they study the trigger. They ask, why am I stressed? What system can I build so I don't have to feel this again? One numbs the pain. The other eliminates the source. I'll give you a real story. There was a woman I coached, mid-30s, good job, always broke. Every time she got pay, her bank balance did a disappearing act. She thought she had a budgeting problem, but what she really had was a consumer identity. She believed, deep down, that money was for feeling good. Until I asked her one question. What if you never spent another dollar to feel better, only to build better? That shook her. She went silent, then said, I've never even thought like that. And that is the problem. Most people don't know another way exists. They're playing a game they never chose, with rules they never questioned. Let's talk dopamine, because this is science, not just mindset fluff. The consumer brain is addicted to short-term rewards. Buy something, get a hit. Eat something, get a hit. Get likes, get a hit. It's a loop. The investor brain is different. They delay the hit. They push gratification into the future and train their brain to get excited about that. Imagine that, being addicted to building, to planting seeds, to watching them grow. It's not willpower. It's wiring. Neuroscience shows us that habits are not about motivation. They're about identity. If you see yourself as a consumer, you'll act like one. If you see yourself as an investor, even when you're broke, you'll start behaving like one. And behavior creates outcome. Let me give you a mental shift you can use today. From now on, don't ask, can I afford this? That question is weak. Ask, what will this cost me over time? That's an investor's question. Example, you see a $70 dinner. Looks affordable. But if you invested that same $70 at 10% annually for 30 years, that dinner actually costs you over $1,200. Still hungry? Or look at your iPhone. Costs $1,200 new. But do you need the newest camera? Or do you need cash flow in your 40s? One gives you 4K selfies. The other buys you freedom. Let's go deeper. I know someone who makes $200,000 a year. You'd think he's balling, right? Nope. He's paycheck to paycheck, because every time his income rises, his lifestyle inflates. He's not rich. He's just a high-earning consumer. Now compare that to my friend Jalen. makes $60,000, drives a 2008 Honda, invests 35% of his income, has a rental property, already has more cash flow than a six-figure guy. Why? Because Jalen thinks like an investor. He knows the game. He's not buying liabilities. He's building assets. Here's the punchline. Thinking like an investor isn't about your bank account. It's about your lens, how you see the world. When a consumer sees a paycheck, they ask, "What can I buy?" An investor asks, "What can I build with this?" When a consumer sees a problem, they panic. An investor sees a potential market. When a consumer sees free time, they scroll. An investor uses it to learn, connect, or execute. And the scary part? The longer you stay in consumer mode, the harder it is to leave, because consumption feeds comfort. And comfort is the enemy of growth. So what do? Start rewiring. Small moves, today. Set up auto investing. Even if it's $20 a week. Read one page of an investing book each morning. Track where your money goes, every dollar. And before you buy anything over $50, ask, does this get me closer or further from freedom? And here's the kicker. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to stop being passive. Because passivity is the real poverty. Look, I get it. This stuff isn't sexy. It's not going viral on TikTok. But you know what is? The smile of someone who doesn't worry about rent anymore. The confidence of someone who owns their time. That's what you're playing for. So next time you get paid, don't just think about what you can buy. Think about what you're really buying into. Because every dollar is a vote for the future you're building. Are you voting for freedom? Or just more stuff? You want to think like an investor? Then start now. Not when you have more money. That's just the consumer talking. You don't need to be rich to start, but you do need to start. To ever get rich. Let's talk about fear. Not the movie kind. Not the monster under your bed kind. The quiet fear. The fear that disguises itself as logic. The one that whispers, what if you lose it all? You want to think like an investor? Then you have to understand one thing. How you perceive risk determines how you create wealth. Because here's the hard truth. Most people don't avoid investing because they're broke. They avoid it because they're scared. Scared of making a mistake. Scared of looking stupid. Scared of losing. And that fear, it costs them everything. Let me give you an example. There were two guys I knew back in 2020, both in their mid-20s, both with $5,000 in savings. Bitcoin had just crashed. One of them said, "I don't trust that crypto stuff. It's too volatile." The other said, "This might be the cheapest it'll ever be again." Guess what happened? One guy still has $5,000 in his savings. The other, over $200,000 from just that one decision. Now look, this isn't about crypto. It's about risk psychology. One saw danger, the other saw opportunity. Same environment, different brain. See, the consumer brain is wired to avoid risk because risk means discomfort, and discomfort triggers fear. And fear shuts everything down. The investor brain is different. They don't avoid risk, they study it. They calibrate it. They ask, what's the worst case scenario? And can I live with it? And if the answer is yes, they move. Because here's the irony. The biggest risk is avoiding risk. Avoid growth and you get stuck. Avoid change and you get left behind. Avoid investing and you'll work forever. But most people, they want guarantees. They want certainty. They want the reward without the tension. It's like asking for muscles without lifting weights. It just doesn't work. Let me ask you something. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Go ahead. Really think about it. Now ask yourself, why aren't you doing that now? Because most people don't fear failure. They fear the feeling of failure. They fear how they'll look to others, to themselves. But here's the plot twist. Investors fail all the time. They just don't call it failure. They call it data. Losses are part of the game. Mistakes are tuition. They pay for information. Ever heard of Ray Dalio? One of the most successful investors in history. You know what he says? Pain plus reflection equals progress. Not profit. Not praise, pain. That's what teaches you. That's what molds the investor's brain. Not YouTube tutorials. Not theory, but pressure. But decisions with consequences. You want a risk-free life? Cool, just know this. That life will be small, predictable, comfortable, and quietly devastating. Because here's what they don't tell you. Avoiding risk is still a risk. You risk never knowing what you're capable of. You risk regret. You risk dying with your potential still in you. So what does the investor do differently? They build what's called a risk framework. They ask 3 questions before every move. 1. What's the upside? 2. What's the downside? 3. How can I protect myself if it goes bad? That's it. It's not emotional, it's structural, like engineering. For example, you want to start a business. You calculate. Worst case, you lose $2,000 and 3 months of effort. Best case, you build an asset that pays you for years. Now ask, can I recover from the loss? If yes, it's not a risk, it's a test. You want to invest in a course. Worst case, you don't apply the info. Best case, you learn something that triples your income. So the real risk, not taking it. Here's the brutal truth. Most people are underexposed to upside. They don't give themselves enough chances to win because they're too busy protecting what little they already have. That you can't protect your way into wealth. You have to build your way in. And building requires exposure to effort, to uncertainty, to feedback, and yes, to loss. That the more you expose yourself to smart risk, the more resilient you become. It's like lifting weights. At first it hurts, you shake, you fail, but then you grow, you adapt, you move more weight with less effort. Same with investing. Your risk tolerance expands, your decision-making sharpens, your fear shrinks. Here's the flip side. Stay safe, and you get weaker. Mentally, emotionally, financially. I've seen it too many times. Brilliant people, with ideas, with drive, but frozen by fear. And that fear costs them everything. So here's the real investor mindset. Risk isn't something you run from. It's something you learn to manage. You don't eliminate it, you respect it, you prepare for it. And then, you move forward anyway, because the only thing scarier than taking a risk is looking back 10 years from now and realizing you never really tried. So I'll ask you, what's the bigger risk for you? Trying and failing, or never trying at all? Because if you're watching this, chances are you're already losing time, and time is the one investment you can never get back. You ready to stop fearing risk and start building a life worth risking for? There's a moment in every investor's journey when the game changes. It's subtle, it's invisible, but once it happens, you can't go back. It's the moment when you stop thinking like a hustler and start thinking like a builder. You stop chasing single wins, and you start building a system. That's the 4th shift, and it's everything. Most people think investing is about picking the right stock, buying real estate at the right time, or finding the next big thing. But that's tactics. That's surface level. The real players, the ones who stay wealthy, they build machines. They create systems that print money while they sleep, while they travel, while they think, while they build the next system. Think about McDonald's. Is it the best burger in the world? Not even close. But it's the best system for distributing burgers. Efficient, scalable, predictable. Same with investing. The investor doesn't just ask, where should I put my money? They ask, what engine am I building with this move? And the crazy part? You don't need millions to build a money machine. You need a blueprint. You need structure. You need clarity. Let me break it down. Most people live on a linear financial model. Work gives, earn gives, spend gives, repeat. It's a treadmill. Run faster, get tired faster, but never escape. The investor thinks in loops. They designed feedback cycles, where money flows into systems that produce more money, where time spent today reduces time needed tomorrow. Let me give you a story. There's a girl I met named Sam. She had a freelance graphic design hustle. At first, she was grinding. $40 here, $60 there. But then something clicked. She started recording tutorials of her design process, uploaded them to YouTube, monetized the channel, linked to her Canva templates, sold them on Gumroad, then started running ads from her YouTube income. Now her old clients still call her, but she politely declines because the machine is doing the work, and she's free to think, to build more. That's investor thinking. Not, how do I earn more? But, how do I make this repeat itself without me? Let's talk architecture. Here's a simple system any beginner can build. Step 1. High-income skill. Freelance. Sales. Content. Step 2. Save 50% of income. Step 3. Auto-invest 20% monthly into index funds or ETFs. Step 4. Use remaining to fund scalable side project. G. Digital product, YouTube, newsletter. Step 5. Reinvest profits into hiring help, freeing up time. Step 6. Scale what works, kill what doesn't. Step 7. Build portfolio of assets across different verticals. This isn't get rich quick. This is build rich forever. Because systems don't get tired. They don't oversleep. They don't ask for time off. They just run. If you build them right. Here's the real game. The investor is an engineer. They build engines that convert inputs into outputs. Time gives content, gives traffic, gives sales, gives reinvest, gives freedom. But here's what stops most people. They're stuck in manual mode. They do everything themselves. They trade time for cash. They hold all the pieces in their head. No automation, no delegation, no strategy. That's exhausting and unsustainable, because if your income depends on you showing up every day, you're not free. You're just self-employed. The investor wants more than money. They want leverage. Leverage of systems, leverage of content, leverage of people, leverage of code. Every wealthy person you admire is using leverage. Not just financial leverage, but attention leverage, network leverage, intellectual property. And here's the trick. You don't need to be a genius to build systems. You just need to start thinking in terms of systems. Instead of, how do I make $1,000? Ask, how do I set up a system that makes $1,000 a month forever? Instead of, how do I make this sale? Ask, how do I build a funnel that turns strangers into clients automatically? Instead of, how do I find time to post content? Ask, how do I batch, schedule, and repurpose content so it works while I sleep? And here's what no one tells you. Systems don't kill creativity. They free it. Because when the basics are handled, money, content, outreach, your mind is free to dream bigger, to create without desperation, to operate like a visionary, not a worker. Let me give you a practical exercise. Step 1. Write down everything you're doing to make money. Step 2. Circle what only you can do. Step 3. Put a square around what can be automated or delegated. Step 4. Start building the systems, one by one. Yes, it's slow at first. Yes, it's harder than just grinding. But 6 months from now, you'll look back and realize you built a small machine. And machines compound. That's the real investor advantage. They're not smarter. They're structured. And that structure multiplies everything. You can't scale chaos. You can only scale systems. So ask yourself, are you building a financial life? Or are you just stacking up random wins? Because at some point, if you want to escape the grind, you need to stop hustling like a laborer and start building like an architect. If I gave you 2 options, option A, $100,000 in cash. Option B, 10 high-level connections who trust you and want to collaborate. Which would you take? Most people would grab the cash. Investors take the network every time. Because they know something most people ignore. Money flows through people. Opportunities flow through people. Leverage, ideas, access, scale. All of it is people-powered. But here's the kicker. Most consumers treat networking like a chore. They show up when they need something. They reach out with desperation. They think relationships are about getting. But the investor knows it's about planting. They're not building friendships. They're building infrastructure. They're investing in social capital. And it pays dividends for decades. Let me tell you a true story. There was a guy named Adam, mid-30s, broke, working from his basement. But every night, he reached out to 3 creators he admired. He didn't ask for anything. He just gave value, editing help, thumbnail ideas, insights. 6 months in, one of them asked him to co-write a video. That video hit 5 million views. Now Adam runs a content studio with 8 employees. Never ran ads. Never begged for clients. He just invested in people. You want to think like an investor. Start thinking, who do I know? Who knows me? And what do they know me for? Because your name is your portfolio. Your reputation is your compound interest. Every DM, every comment, every call. It's an asset class. The problem, most people network backwards. They ask, who can help me? But the real game is, who can I help so much they never forget me? Because when you make powerful people feel understood, helped, elevated, they never forget. And in this game, one right person can change everything. One investor, one collaborator, one person who believes in you and brings you into rooms you never thought you'd be in. Let's get practical. You want to upgrade your life, Upgrade your circle. And that starts with you bringing value first. Ask yourself, what skill do I have that's useful to someone 10 steps ahead of me? Can I make their process faster? Can I save them time? Can I make them look better? If yes, show up. Offer. Give without keeping score. Because here's the secret. It always comes back. Not always from the person you gave to, but from somewhere. It's like planting seeds in a forest. You don't know which tree will feed you. But if you plant enough, one of them always does. Another practical move. Every week, send 5 genuine compliments to people doing work you admire. No pitch, just respect. Over time, people start remembering your name. They look you up. They start replying. You get into conversations others can't buy. That's real wealth. Not just cash in the bank, but access, credibility, trust. Here's a mindset shift. Don't just build a network, build a reputation. Be known for something, known for being helpful, for being sharp, for showing up consistently. Because in the end, your network isn't who you know, it's who knows you. And whether they'd vouch for you when you're not in the room. Let me ask you this. If I asked 10 people around you what you're great at, would they know? Could they explain it in one sentence? Would they recommend you to someone else? If not, you don't have a network, you have acquaintances. The investor builds relationships that turn into pipelines, referrals, introductions, co-investments, revenue shares, long-term plays. They don't chase likes, they build alignment. Here's one more real story. I met a guy at a conference, didn't look rich, didn't talk big, but he listened, asked smart questions, followed up. 6 months later, I found out he was quietly funding creators behind some of the biggest finance channels on YouTube. Now, he's on track to build a media empire with almost no content of his own. He just built the right relationships. That's investor thinking. They're not just planting trees, they're planting forests, ecosystems. So ask yourself, who are the 5 people that would change everything for you if they knew who you were? And what can you do this month to get on their radar? You don't need to be loud. You need to be useful and consistent. That's what earns access. Because here's the hard truth. You can be the most talented person in the world, but if no one knows you, if no one trusts you, you're invisible. And invisible people don't get opportunities. So build the real asset. Not the money, not the brand, the trust. Because when trust compounds, money follows, freedom follows, and your network becomes your net worth. There comes a moment in life, and maybe this video is that moment for you, when you realize the way you've been thinking isn't the way that builds freedom. You've done the safe thing, you've worked hard, you've saved a little, maybe even dabbled in a stock or two, but deep down, you know you're still stuck in a system that isn't built for your freedom. It's built for your compliance. You clock in, you wait for the weekend, you buy the next upgrade, you chase the next dopamine hit. You tell yourself, one day, I'll figure it out. But days become decades. And the worst part? You never made a conscious decision. You just drifted. You lived by default, not by design. That's not your fault. You were taught to behave, not build, to obey, not optimize, to consume, not compound. But that ends now, because once you learn to think like an investor, you can never unsee it. You start to spot leverage in conversations. You start to value silence over no's. You stop asking, how do I make more money? And start asking, how do I build something that works without me? That's the final shift. The 6th lens. The investor stops chasing. He starts becoming. You don't get rich by running. You get rich by transforming into the kind of person who attracts wealth, who builds it, who holds it, who multiplies it. And to do that, you must make one final mental leap. You stop seeing investing as an action and start seeing it as an identity. Not I invest sometimes, but I am an investor. Say it out loud now. I am an investor. Feels different, doesn't it? Because when your identity changes, your decisions change. And when your decisions change, your life changes. But here's what no one tells you. There is no finish line. There's no point where you've made it. The game just keeps evolving. The money gets bigger. The risks get more complex. The stakes get higher. But so do you. That's why the real investor doesn't just build portfolios. He builds character, discipline, patience, curiosity, resilience. Because money can be made and lost. But who you become in the process, that stays. So let me ask you, What are you really building? A bank account? Or a life that makes the account irrelevant? A stack of cash? Or a set of systems, skills, and relationships that bring cash when you're sleeping? You want a rich life? Then think richer thoughts. Make richer decisions. Hold yourself to a richer standard. That's not about flexing. That's about owning your future. Not renting it. Not watching others live it. Owning it. And here's what's beautiful. You don't need permission. You don't need credentials. You don't need to wait. You can start today. Right now. With one choice. To live intentionally. To build deliberately. To stop being a passive participant in someone else's system. And start building your own. Let me give you one last image. Picture yourself in 10 years. You walk into a house you own. Paid for by assets you built. You check your phone. Payments from your systems rolled in while you slept. You open your calendar. It's empty. Because you own your time. Now imagine looking back at this very moment. The night you made the decision to flip the switch. To change your lens. To walk away from the comfort of consumption. And step into the discomfort of creation. That version of you. They're waiting. But they won't wait forever. So don't just watch this video. Become this video. Let every word be a brick. Let every idea be a hammer. And build. Because the world doesn't need more consumers. It needs creators. It needs thinkers. It needs investors. So I'll leave you with this. There are two types of people watching right now. Those who will say, that was inspiring, and change nothing. And those who will say, that was a warning, and change everything. Which one are you? If this video made something click in your head, if you felt that shift, that discomfort, that spark, don't ignore it. That's not just motivation. That's a signal. The world wants you distracted, tired, busy, scrolling, buying, comparing. But if you made it this far, you're not like most people. You didn't just consume this video. You invested in it. You gave me your attention. Now give yourself your attention. Because watching this was easy. Changing your mindset? That's the hard part. But you've already started. Now finish the job. Take action. Rewatch the part that hit you hardest. Write one idea down. Build a habit around it. And then, keep building. And if you want to keep learning how to think like an investor, not just in money, but in relationships, time, skills, and life itself, then subscribe. This channel isn't for followers. It's for founders, builders, leaders. And if that's who you're becoming, then I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay focused. Think long-term. And act like your future is watching. Because it is.